structural organization in animals, which is in turn called animal tissues. So when we talk about tissues, we can classify tissues into 5 types. You may be thinking it is 4, but let me tell you. The first one being epithelial tissue, second, connective tissue, third, muscular tissue, fourth, nervous tissue, and the fifth one is specialized connective tissue. What do I mean by that? I mean specialized connective tissue which does not perform basically the function of a tendon or a ligament, right? That is why we classify the connective tissues like blood and lymph as specialized connective tissue. We are going to deal with this in some further audiobooks. Let's start with the epithelial tissue. When I talk about epithelial tissue, it is the first evolved and first formed tissue, right? Why is it that? Because when the germ layers ecto, endo and mesoderm occurs in the gastrula phase of zygote formation, then these 3 germ layers are formed. And in turn, we know that epithelial tissues are first evolved. That is why we say that it is evolved from all these germ layers, right? The second feature of epithelial tissue can be said as it has very little intracellular matrix, or you can say it's negligible, which means it can be said as absent. Epithelial tissues are characterized by the existence of cell junction, and when you will read about squamous of epithelial, you will notice that there are tight junctions packed with each other. So basically there are 3 gap junctions which I have told you: gap junction, tight junction and adhering junction. So all these are present in most amount in the epithelial tissue. Now, epithelial tissue is avascular. What do I mean by avascular? Avascular means that there are no blood vessels in this epithelial tissue. There is an exception, it's the stria vascularis in the internal ear. But you may be thinking that if it is avascular, how does it get nourishment? Let me answer to this question. It gets nourishment from the underlying dermis or the connective tissue. So basically, epithelial tissue rests on a basement membrane which consists of basal lamella made up of mucopolysaccharides and glycoproteins, and which is basal lamina is connected to the more closely connected to the basement membrane, and then we have the reticular lamina, which is made up of collagen and muscular fibers, which is more connected towards the connective tissue layer. So connective tissue layer is also known as dermis. So basically it gets nourishment from there, and this basement membrane is negatively charged composition of heparin sulfate, right? That is why it helps in the diffusion, you can say, and due to this heparin sulfate, the nourishment is provided. Now, epithelial tissue is involved in regeneration process. So basically, how does it regenerate? Let me explain this to you. Epithelial tissue is connected to each other. 2 epithelial tissues are connected to each other by a E-cadherin calcium. This is changed to N-cadherin during a wound. These N-cadherin multiply in number, regenerates with the help of mitosis process, and then fills the space in the wound area of your body part. Basically, it forms mesenchyme, which has the power of regeneration. Now, epithelial tissue in turn can be divided into two parts: simple and compound. Simple is a unilayer which rests on a basement membrane, and compound epithelial tissue are multi-layer, rests on a basement membrane. If I talk about simple epithelium, it is divided further into squamous, cuboidal, columnar, ciliated, and pseudostratified. When I talk about squamous epithelium tissue are made up of irregularly shaped cells which seems polygonal to you, and it has a central nucleus or a bulging nucleus. The squamous epithelia is also known as a pavement membrane. And why is it so? Because the cells of squamous tissue are closely packed and it appears like tiles on the floor. That is why we say it pavement membrane. Also, we call this as a tessellated epithelium. Why? Because in the blood vessels of the endothelium, we see wavy appearance of the epithelium. That is why it is called tessellated epithelium. Okay. Now, where is it located? The most important function, I need you to hear this very properly. First is the Bowman's capsule, which indicates it helps in excretion. Then we have alveoli plus bronchioles, right? Which in turn explains that it helps in respiration. Then we have absorption as its characteristic. So the location would be blood vessels and lymphatic vessels. Am I right? So, and rete testes also as an incretion. Okay, let me tell you a fact which is important, or you would say an extra thing for all of you. If we talk about alveoli structure, it has two types of epithelia. One is the squamous, which helps in exchange, and the other one is cuboidal. Now, what does cuboidal do in this case? Cuboidal helps in, let me tell you one thing, that when you breathe out, when you do exhalation, then you may think that the alveoli should, contract and the two walls of the alveoli should mix. So why doesn't it mix? This is because of the presence of a compound called lecithin, which is positively charged, which repels the two walls of the alveoli from bursting. So basically you can say cuboidal helps in repairing, right? So basically the respiratory surfactant, which reduces the surface tension between walls of lungs, and it helps in preventing of the bursting, right? Now let's move on to cuboidal epithelia. As the name suggests, the cells would be cuboidal. Cells may be associated with microvilli, which would be called brush bordered cuboidal epithelium, and these are present in the PCT of nephron, brush bordered epithelium. Now it has microvilli, we know this. What is more special about this? It also has mitochondria in it, right? Now if we talk about the location of cuboidal epithelium, we know it's PCT, DCT, Henle's loop, right? And then we have thylakoid follicles, we have seminiferous tubules, we have ovum, we have pancreatic duct, right? And in this epithelia, the absorption takes place by active transportation, which is lower concentration to higher concentration. Basically, we can say that cuboidal epithelium helps in formation of sperms, excretion, lecithin production of thyroxine, and absorption, right? Now let's come to columnar epithelium. As the name suggests, the cells would be long, tall, slender, cells, and the nucleus is a basal nucleus. It is oval in shape, right? And these are again associated with microvilli as well as goblet cells, right? And the brush bordered columnar epithelium, which has microvilli in it, is found in the intestines. You may know this already, right? Now, what are goblet cells? As I mentioned, goblet cells are unicellular glands which produces mucus, right? Now, if I talk about the location of columnar epithelium, of course we know it's intestine, which is stomach, and then you have the bile duct and the gastric glands, intestinal glands. This is because of the production of goblet, and we all know that bile duct and gastric glands and intestinal glands needs mucus. Now, what if no mucus is there? You would be able to get a peptic ulcer, which you would not like to get for sure. Yeah. Let's talk about the next kind, which is ciliated epithelium. So when cuboidal or columnar is associated with cilia, it is known as ciliated epithelium. And ciliated columnar epithelium, it contains cilia, which is originated from basal granules. Cilia is involved in the movement of mucus in respiratory tract, right, from inside to outside. So what is the function of cilia in columnar epithelium? It is the transportation of mucus, which is produced by goblet cells. Again, the location is fallopian tube because it helps in movement. Vasa differentia, cavities of brain, cavities of spinal cord, and uterus, cervix, and respiratory tract. Whereas ciliated cuboidal is associated with nephrons and ventricles. When I talk about pseudostratified columnar epithelium, in this epithelium a single layer of cell is there, but cellular size is different. It is composed of short and tall cells, hence it appears double layered. Again, we have ciliated and non-ciliated. The ciliated is located in the respiratory tract, and the non-ciliated is found in the urethra and parotid salivary glands. If I talk about glandular epithelia, then it helps in secretion. It is based on the number of cells, which is unicellular goblet cells, and then we have the multicellular, which is sweat glands, sebaceous glands, salivary glands, and so on. If I classify it on the basis of pouring of secretion, we have endocrine glands and exocrine glands. Basically, exocrine glands are the ducts associated gland which secretes components and release from outside with the help of duct, like the salivary glands, sweat glands, oil glands, and mammary glands. Endocrine glands, it basically refers to the secretion onto the fluid surrounding the material, and these are basically helping in the hormone formation.
So this was all